"No one wants a fat girl, sir. But I can nurse the baby," said the cook, the widower said. "Then stay." The smell of burnt toast lingered in the grand kitchen of the Hawthorne mansion, mixing awkwardly with the scent of lemon polish and grief. James Hawthorne, a successful architect and widower of 6 months, stood motionless before a high chair, where his 6-month-old daughter, Ella, whimpered softly. He had designed buildings that touched the sky, but he couldn't stop his baby from crying. His wife Lydia had passed away giving birth, and since then, nothing had been the same. The house felt colder. The laughter was gone. Every sound of Ella's cries tore through him like a blade he couldn't pull out. James had hired nannies, 5 of them. All left within days complaining the baby was too fussy or needed a mother's touch, and maybe they were right. James wasn't just losing his daughter's trust. He was losing his own will to try. That morning he sat in the kitchen, tie undone, eyes hollow, when Mrs. Briggs, the longtime housekeeper, hesitated at the door. "Sir," she said gently, "there's someone asking about the cook's position. I told her you weren't taking interviews today, but she insists it's important." James sighed. "Fine, send her in." The door creaked open and a large woman in a plain floral dress stepped in, wringing her hands nervously. Her name was Clara Jenkins. She had soft brown eyes, round cheeks, and a warmth that somehow filled the cold room, but she wasn't what one might call presentable for the elegant Hawthorne mansion. Her shoes were worn, her apron patched, and her hair slightly frizzed. Still, she stood tall, or at least tried to. "Good morning, sir. I heard you need someone to help in the kitchen," she stammered. James looked her over quickly. "Mrs. Jenkins, was it? I'm not hiring right now." Clara lowered her gaze. "I understand. It's just, I heard your baby's been crying." Her voice cracked slightly. "I can nurse her. I lost my own baby last year. She would have been about your Ella's age now." The words hit James like a quiet earthquake. "You nurse?" he asked, startled. Clara nodded, embarrassed. "I still have milk sometimes. The doctor said it happens, and no one wants to hire a fat cook, sir. But if it helps the little one, I'd be grateful for the chance." For a long moment, neither spoke. The kitchen clock ticked. Ella's soft cries echoed down the hall. Something in Clara's trembling voice, raw, vulnerable, touched a part of James he'd buried with Lydia. Without another word, he motioned her toward the nursery. When Clara picked up the baby, Ella looked up at her with curious blue eyes. She sniffled, whimpered once, and then, miraculously, quieted. Clara began to hum softly, a lullaby that seemed older than sorrow itself. Within minutes, Ella's tiny hand rested peacefully against Clara's chest. The mansion, once suffocating in silence, felt alive again. James watched, stunned. She's never done that for anyone," he murmured. Clara smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Babies know when someone's heart remembers, sir. Mine remembers too." From that day on, Clara stayed. She worked quietly, almost invisibly, cleaning, cooking, and most importantly, caring for Ella. The baby flourished under her care. She smiled more, giggled, reached for Clara before anyone else. And little by little, the widower who had once drowned in silence began to hear laughter again. Yet the townspeople whispered. They called Clara the fat cook, joked that she was trying to replace the lady of the house. Even some of the staff snickered behind her back. But Clara never complained. She would just smile and say, "If kindness had a weight, I'd be proud to be heavy." James began noticing her resilience, how she never snapped, never raised her voice, even when others mocked her. One evening, as he came home from a long meeting, he found her sitting by the fireplace holding Ella and humming the same tune that had calmed the baby months ago. Ella was asleep, a faint smile on her lips. The sight made something ache in James's chest, something almost like peace. He cleared his throat. "Clara, I overheard what the gardener said today. About your weight." Clara looked down. "It's all right, sir. People talk. It's not all right," he said quietly. "You've done more for my daughter than anyone else ever has." Clara smiled softly. "Sometimes love comes from those the world doesn't notice." "Sir." That night, for the first time in months, James dreamed of Lydia, and she was smiling, nodding as if to say, "It's okay to let someone else love her now." Days turned into weeks and winter melted into spring. Clara transformed the mansion, not with grandeur but with warmth. She filled the kitchen with the scent of fresh bread, the nursery with laughter, and the lonely widower's heart with something he thought he'd lost forever: gratitude. But one morning, James walked into the kitchen and found Clara sitting by the table, staring at an envelope in her trembling hands. I think I should go, sir," she said softly. James frowned. "Go? Why?" "I overheard Mrs. Briggs. She said the neighbors are saying things, that it's improper for me to stay here, for a widower to keep a cook who nurses his child." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to bring shame on your name." James stood silent, his mind racing. He looked at Ella, his daughter, who was reaching for Clara, calling, "Mama!" For the first time, the word pierced through him. He looked at the woman who had saved his baby's life, who had carried warmth into their grief, and he felt something shift inside him. He walked to her slowly and said, firmly, "Then stay." Clara's eyes widened. "Sir?" He nodded. "Stay, let them talk. They don't know what you've done, how you brought this house back to life, how you saved my daughter and me." She tried to protest, but his voice softened. "You said no one wants a fat girl, but I do, Ella does. Your family, Clara." Tears streamed down her face as she covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. "I don't deserve that, sir." James smiled for the first time in a long while. Kindness always deserves a home. From that day, no one dared to mock Clara again. Not because James told them to stop, but because everyone could see the truth. The once cold and empty mansion now glowed with life. Neighbors who came by for dinner found laughter instead of loneliness, warmth instead of sorrow. Years later, when Ella started school, she proudly told her classmates, "My mommy's an angel. She's big and soft and smells like cookies." And when they teased her for calling the cook her mother, Ella simply said, "She makes hearts full. That's what moms do." Time passed, and the Hawthorne home became known as the house with the kind cook. Strangers who arrived there never left hungry, neither in stomach nor in spirit. Clara continued to cook, to nurture, and to love without condition. And James, who once thought his life had ended with Lydia, learned that love doesn't die, it simply changes shape. One summer evening, as the sun set over the rose garden, James stood on the porch watching Clara chase Ella across the lawn, both laughing so hard they could barely breathe. He whispered under his breath, "Thank you, Lydia. You sent us someone who knew how to heal." And for the first time, the pain that once ruled his life turned into quiet gratitude. Because sometimes, the people the world overlooks carry the gentlest strength of all. They are the ones who teach us that love isn't about perfection or appearance. It's about presence, compassion, and the courage to stay when everyone else walks away. And so, in a mansion once filled with silence, a cook who called herself unwanted became the very heart of home.